TCP here with an episode that is sort of reminiscent for viewers that have stuck with us for a longer time. The fabled episodes where the adults in the room, the hosts, leave us for me and Joe to just like toy around and really mess it up and show our inability to function in society. And just
you speak for yourself.
Yeah, okay. Let's see how it goes. How you rein me in from not doing any dumb shit. We definitely got some support here, though. And apparently, like, as you said before the show, this is the first time you presumably, like, have talked about Overwatch at all. I think we did an interview way back when. But other than that, have you even thought about doing anything about Overwatch? Have you kept up? Like, what's your situation, Harsha?
I, talk to people in the scene very infrequently now. But not because I don't want to, but just because I've been busy and they're also getting used to Overwatch 2 and stuff. But then I think I might do a podcast next year. We'll see how interesting Overwatch 2 is. I think if I enjoy it, then I'll try it out. But if not, then I don't know. We'll see.
Is there an elevator explanation for those Houston fans? I might be wondering what you're doing right now.
Yeah, so I'm working in software, or I'm going to accept a position in software engineering within, I guess, the next few weeks. So, yeah.
Nice. Do you think there's anything applicable from Overwatch that you could take over from that domain?
Dude, actually, I was thinking about this because, so to preface, I went from not knowing how to code 6 months ago to getting pretty good offers. So I think the one applicable skill was you have to learn super fast if you're gonna try something like that. But then in esports, you constantly have to reevaluate how you think depending on patches or on comps or just everyday practice can just throw you a really different scenario. So I feel like that might have trained my brain to think differently or think at a different pace. So maybe that was a useful skill that I got out of it, but otherwise there's not that much transferable.
Look, I'm the host here, so I can't hold myself back from going on a little tangent here. But what you're describing is something that I recently read in a book called Range, and it's basically about the idea that we think we live in a society of specialization, and the more you practice in one domain, the better you get at it. And for some domains, that's true. For some, areas of improvement. So, for instance, for chess, studying chess theory is the best way to get better at chess. And those are kind domains. But there are wicked domains where, just doing the one thing won't help you improve much, right? And that's true for some sports, especially Overwatch. I would say Overwatch is probably one of the more wicked esports, just because everything changes so completely. We're switching sometimes from MOBAs to FPS games between seasons. We're introducing hero pools. Everything changes so frequently that we have to that it stands to reason that you then apply knowledge from other domains back into your Overwatch knowledge. So you basically get the solutions on problems that are alike, right? And I think in that, yes, totally. Overwatch knowledge could be very applicable to whatever you're doing and trying to get, because let's be honest, Overwatch is wicked as a domain, but coding or IT, generally speaking, also very much is, right?
Yeah. You're gonna drive me on a tangent because this is also one of the things you mentioned, and especially the amount of change that people have to deal with. And it doesn't really mess with me in any way, because as a coach, you're just changing how you look at the game. But the people actually playing the game, it's so cruel, I guess, that people's entire skill set can just be phased out, I feel like. So I don't know. I won't go too much on a tangent. I'm sure it's been covered, especially in earlier seasons when it was more prevalent. But yeah, definitely very rough, very wicked.
Right. Now, let's talk about that, right? Because I think, and the teams we're going to talk about, you at least have some, familiar aspects to them. But how do you think, from what you've heard, maybe about Overwatch 2, or how you imagine a game of 5v5 to go. How much do you think that will just naturally shake up the sort of hierarchy of teams and players? Maybe who adapts better? Like, do you have any like startup like ideas that you will see those teams through?
I think that probably I think so. My Without like having too much knowledge behind the scenes, I think that most likely I think like honestly DPS and supports really won't change that much. Like I feel like the roles will be very similar. It's just like the understanding of like the game flow will have to adapt, but I think, top players will adapt. So I don't think that's that big of an issue. I think that it's just really like for the tank, like the biggest change is going to come into place because, dude, I don't know how. So I mean, obviously we're going to talk about some teams that have very different depth in that role, but like I don't know, like there's a lot of different ways you could think about this, right? Because you have teams that have like players like, so for example, we're going to talk about Dallas. There's like Fearless and Hanbin on that team. But then every team that Fearless has been a part of, he's like molded the identity of that team, I feel like. So how are you going to come to grips with that when he's not the most flexible tank on the team? Or then we're going to talk about Houston as well. Like we have Piggy on the team and he's the only tank on the team, right? So I don't know. When maybe something like Ryan is meta, I don't know how you're going to come to grips with that. It's like a very new problem and I don't really know how people will adapt until we like see it. I feel like we just have to see like how, I don't know, we just have to see which systems prevail, honestly.
Yeah. Going to be a sink or swim season for a lot of people.
Yeah.
I am kind of interested in your thoughts, not to completely drive into the Overwatch 2 tangent, but I think DPS in general, like when you look at like like if you subtract a tank from Overwatch now, I feel like that like already is like a huge shift. Is there any, and I've kind of thought about this like vocally on the podcast before, but is there like any thought in your mind that the emphasis on positioning and space control from the DPS's perspective probably changes with Overwatch 2?
That I'm not sure. I mean, I'm sure it will change, but what I'll say is like I don't know to what degree maybe.
Sure.
Because I think that you'll be able to get away with more just naturally, like not having, for example, not having like a diva or something healing. Or yeah, I don't know. I think it's like so hard to say without actually playing the game yourself or like without actually seeing scrims yourself because I think if you just naturally think about it, yeah, DPS will 100% be able to get away with more, but then like the enemy's DPS will also be able to get away with more, so it like evens out in that way, I think.
It's an interesting thought. I'm excited to get into the season finally because it is such a huge change, and it's innocuous in some ways because it's just one less player, but really could change, and there's really not that many changes, and cool reworks, but like these are significant.
And also,
definitely.
I'll say the following, right? And consider this my heads up to the Scrimbox Stock Exchange, like a little leak boy. The concept of like thinking that all off tanks and tanks will just like evenly split based on the heroes that they previously played already doesn't make sense anymore for some teams. Like, and in cases where like, oh yeah, that guy's a specialist on that hero. Nah, that off tank is now playing that hero for you. Like that is a very interesting development. And it's not true for all teams, right? Like for some or for probably most, that split makes sense. I think just some teams realize the off tank player is just a skill beast, or like it's very good to just have like some consistency in the tank role, right? And that also, and here's the segue, makes me a little bit more hopeful for Houston with the one tank situation, right? Because, for being honest, Piggy is pretty skilled as a player, right?
Yeah.
At the same time, you could field as a counter argument that he was significantly less proficient. Let's say he was outstanding on Sigma, but that wasn't then true for all his off-tank picks, right? So in an environment where he has to cover all the tanks, how does that translate in your mind? Do you think Piggy will be like a standout player, tank player this season?
So I think he can be a standout tank this season. So the thing I really like about Piggy is that he's like a very hard grinder, I would say.
Mm.
So like he will practice more than like any other. If he wants to, he will practice more than any other player in the league, basically. So I think he can absolutely pick up these like new characters, and also honestly, like he would off roll a lot on main tank last year when he was playing ranked. So it's not going to be like super new to him.
Mm.
My worry comes in. So my worry wouldn't come in terms of like, let's say like dive characters like Wrecking Ball and like maybe Winston. Winston is a hard character, but it's like it's very much like game flow based in the old Overwatch. So
Mhm.
I think like if you have a good read on the game, maybe you can be good at that. Now I think for like Ryan has like always been such a different hero from the rest that I get worried putting an off tank on Ryan no matter what. So
Mm.
that's like my biggest concern. I don't know like how the game is going to look, but like if for example Ryan became meta, he would definitely need to like grind that hard, and I don't know if it's enough to make up for the gap between other main tanks that potentially have experience on that. But I think like Orisa, Ball, Winston, I don't think that would be an issue. And I think one thing that Piggy was really good at was it didn't show in the matches, but his Zarya was generally like really good for most aspects of the game. So I would just say like the thing he wasn't outstanding at and did end up improving a lot at was Diva. And I think like if you look at him from the beginning of the season to the end of the season, he
Mhm.
improved like really significantly, honestly. So I would say like he does have the potential to improve. I think that for like most heroes, he can be really good at it. It's just like the Ryan is like the big question mark for me, honestly. And I don't know if that would be meta in a game like Overwatch 2 where
Right.
he doesn't have as much support.
It would take, I think, some serious like old timey rush down Lucio Moira. Let's get on that point. Let's just push the objective.
Yeah, but
Not
even
in-
then, there's like so many mind games in it, right? So
True.
it's like still there's still that experience gap that's going to be really important.
Mm. Yeah. No. It is difficult to your point. To see Ryan maybe with at least with how we're viewing Overwatch 2 right now, and again, that comes with a lot of maybe ignorance on our behalf, but it does seem a little hard to see Rectangle Man having a large place as it stands.
Do you think it's feasible? Because okay, so in your mind, who are like some of the best Overwatch League main tanks of all time? If you had to mention them, like give me some names.
Just overall like
Mhm.
Super Smurf.
Okay.
Do you mean like
Let's
just cross?
stop right
cross-
there. That's already making my point.
Oh yeah.
The
Oh
best
yeah, they're
main
specialized. Is
tank
that what you're
players,
saying?
yeah. The best, two of the best main tank players of all time in Overwatch League were actually successful by splitting the hero pool of the main tank. Now we are asking people to not split, but to actually take on the entire off tank role as well, right?
Yeah.
Is that too much to ask of a person?
So yes and no, because so I think this is where the problem with Overwatch 2 comes in. Like
Mm.
it is and it isn't, in the sense that how I kind of mentioned like I don't know what you're gonna do when you have a team like Dallas and you have like two insane tank players, but one of them like molds the identity of the team versus one of them is just like overall super skilled, generally like very flexible and stuff like that.
Mm.
Like I don't know how you're gonna make these kinds of decisions. And it could just turn out that, for example, for that team, leaving Fearless in all the time would be the best course of action because everybody plays around him, or maybe it turns out that he's good on certain maps and Hanbin is good on certain maps. I have such a hard time like thinking about. I feel like the best teams have been able to split playtime, but I think that a lot of the teams like right under that have to make the most of what they have, right? And so they might end up having to just sort of lean on one style, if that makes sense, and just stick to one player covering the entire role so that he can get the most reps in, the most practice. It's such a weird thing to like look at and like think about because because we've never seen anything like it before, obviously.
Mm.
Where do you land on that, Joe? Because from my point of view, we are
Mhm.
looking at three different aspects. We're looking at soul of a team, someone that takes charge of the
Yeah.
team. We're looking at style of a player that molds a
Yep.
team, like Fearless and being aggressive and whatnot.
Mhm.
And we're looking at skill, someone like Hanben who's like super explosive. Now, maybe also tying that into Piggy. Do you think that that's something that he can deliver?
I think Overwatch 2 is going to be open enough to allow for a lot of different possibilities. I don't think the lessons we've learned in Overwatch, the Overwatch 1 era, if we're going to kind of deem it that, are going to go by the wayside. I think there are a lot of things. Let's say this. I think Houston is in a interesting position, much like many teams that look shallow on paper, which maybe isn't necessarily fair to their player skill, that allows them to both showcase their players' skill overall, like Harsha is saying. Piggy's a lot more depth than maybe what was shown during the season, last season, pretty much. They can force things, maybe outside of the meta. They could be able to play the meta. I think in general, for Houston in particular, I don't know if I'm necessarily answering or maybe understanding the question, but I don't know that necessarily Piggy feels like the soul. It doesn't feel like he dictated too much of the style, but it was very clear that he was skilled. So I think he can kind of piece into that format, into that system, whoever ends up being that. I mean, looking at this team, I don't even know who would be. I guess the tanks tend to be, but I don't think that's always the case. Yeah, I don't think that Houston's at a loss necessarily as much as we try to compare them against a team like a Dallas, which obviously has a kind of an anxiety of wealth. It's not an embarrassment so much, but which do you play? Do you play, kind of alluding to, do you play Hanbin, who obviously is very skilled and very flexible, or do you take somebody like Fearless and plug him in? I feel like Atlanta is the same kind of circumstance where it's like, okay, yes, we have Gator. He's kind of that vocal leader. It's evident in all of the conversations that you have with this coaching staff or even with some of the players. Or do you put Hawk on the role? Like it's not an easy choice to make because both players kind of have arguments to be in that seat, right? So it's difficult to argue. I don't think Houston's. I think in a weird way they have a good thing going for them because Piggy is genuinely pretty good.
Let me ask this then, Harsha, because it's a kind of an interesting situation where when you look up from the outside at Houston, you can have two very distinct angles on this. The first one is there is one Western guy and the others are all Korean. So that dude's on the bench because why would they ever communicate in English, right? The other side is that Dante has played in a lot of hybrid rosters, and arguably, he is the veteran on this team for sure, and he also seemed to be like the type of player that can provide the soul for a team. So, is Dante the soul of the Houston Outlaws?
I would say probably. With no, you know what? I would say yes. Out of game, I would say 100% yes. I would say in game, I'm not sure. But I don't think it's maybe that important. I know that the way that Junk likes to think about the game, I think that they'll just play the best players for the meta and the best players at any given time. And I think Dante is a Western player. If there was a Western player that could play on a team full of Koreans, I think it would be Dante. So I don't have honestly worries about that as much as I know a lot of other people would. I think that for example, if it's like Tracer Echo or something like that, I think Dante will 100% play. Or obviously Dante would play in that kind of scenario. But even Tracer Hitscan, I think there's a good chance Dante could play in that kind of scenario. So I think that I'm not worried that he'll be perma benched or anything. I think that he's honestly going to be fine, and I think that he I don't know who I would call the soul on this team because they're just going to be so different from prior years.
Right.
I would think that if you're going to look at players though and look for a soul, I think it would be like Dante or Pelican, one of those two, most likely.
Yeah. That to me feels like I would tend to agree there, where it's like, given a specific meta, I feel like any of the DPS trio probably could kind of stick out as being that flag bearer, that kind of like charge leader, maybe even not necessarily leading the engagements, but having a good grasp, being like the focal point, the carry, if you want to call it. I could see Merritt doing the same thing. Did his duty in China. Saw him kind of do some nutty things, and obviously transitioning that to Korea. But I think you sell Houston last year a little short. Like I remember starting the season, you guys had some interesting looks. So I don't think it's necessarily just that Houston is going to play specifically the meta. And maybe you can correct me if I'm wrong, but I think there's a little bit more creativity than maybe Junk Buck lets on, or maybe Houston in general lets on. I feel like there is this identification of like, okay, these compositions are good, but I remember like last year, especially like I think it was, but I don't think it was the opener, but it was the game against Shock. I think it was in that first week that you guys put like Happy on Hanzo. I was like,
Yeah.
oh, that's an interesting look. We haven't seen that just yet. I don't know if that was necessarily like the thing to do in scrims, but that was like an interesting take. I'm like, okay, cool. Like this Houston coaching staff has like the flexibility to go, okay, cool. We have Happy. Let's put him on this. Like, let's find him these angles. Like he's gonna make plays.
I actually remember why we did that. If you want the
actually, yeah, genuinely, that'd be sick.
So we were definitely at the beginning of the season. Like we were really strong just because we had practiced way more than every other team, basically. So, but I remember specifically on 2 maps, Blizzard World and Anubis. Atlanta actually had Kai on Hanzo, and we were like, shit, like these maps where he can just like take off angles and not be punished at all. Like this is actually such an insane strategy. So we like took it like a day before the match, and Happy thought it was really cool too. So then we ended up just using it against Shock. Dude, we lost that map even though Happy went off so
he
hard.
Popped off so nasty. I remember him like it was in like Mega, like right on Anubis. You take that like left on attack, and he just would like keep. And Choi was just constantly just like, I don't know what to do. Like my attention's being pulled everywhere, and it was
like
pretty brilliant.
Like if you just have a Hanzo on top of you and you have like limited defense matrix and no way of like controlling him, it's so hard to play against.
It's obnoxious, and that's where I'm just like, okay, cool. Like even if that's not necessarily Junk or yours or the coaching staff's idea, the ability to kind of be quick on your feet and identify, okay, cool, like that's good. Like we can see that that's clearly strong, and like maybe we can pilot that, maybe we can take that into our repertoire. That's where I look at this Houston team, and I'm like, okay, cool. Like maybe. I mean, we kind of have to wave our hands in the air and say we don't know what to do with Tank, but Piggy's skilled enough that he can kind of probably cover most of the role, bar none, or at least at a league average level. And then you look at this DPS trio, you look at the supports. Granted, there's no main support, but there again, is it that not that hard? But it's. I think there's a lot of like holes that people are pointing towards that can be remedied, I think, easier than people would imagine.
I agree with that, and I think one thing that people also need to think about is filling all those holes worth it? And what I mean by that is, okay, so yeah, you would cover more things having. I'm going to name like 2 players that are very outstanding on certain roles. So like, let's say you have Moth and you have Ben Best on this, or FD God and Ben Best, something like that, right? On this team, is it worth having extra players who you're going to have to split extra scrim time with, and then suddenly people are not necessarily as comfortable with, go in just for the possibility of like sometimes you'll play different things on different maps, right? But you won't play it necessarily. You won't have the same cohesion necessarily because you're not getting as much practice together. Like I think that there's both a benefit and a cost to filling all these holes, right? And the cost is that you're not going to build the same kind of synergy you would have just playing the same 5 to 6 players every single map, right? So I don't know. I think that it is a little bit overblown in some senses. I also think, dude, I don't think using a flex support on Lucio is as tragic as people think, honestly. Yeah. I think that people really overblow it, and like I've had like Lucio players like look at flex supports and be like, that guy's actually pretty good. So I don't think that it's as tragic. And I think that flex supports are almost every time better than main supports at Brig. Like I think it's like silly how much better flex supports are at Brig than main supports So I think like it's really not as tragic as people think. I just think that Ryan is like the one thing that I
Yeah.
will always have a concern about.
Okay,
Are you concerned? Granted, we haven't necessarily seen it just yet. But is like Doomfist moving to tank kind of a weird like?
Oh, you're right about that.
Is that a weird one? I think that's just going to be a weird one for most flex tanks in general. But
We might see DPS if Doomfist is like perma meta on certain maps. Maybe a DPS plays it. That'd be kind of fun.
I think I'm right there with you. If
Yeah.
it's like rigid in the way that it's just like this is the Winston meta, we just play Winston every map, every sub map, every point. Like we don't change it, we don't deviate away from it. It's just Winston, and we just replace that Winston name with the Doomfist name. Then you can probably see somebody like maybe Sparkle or maybe Mirror come out and lead
Yeah.
those charges. I don't know, maybe Pelican. I don't know.
Yeah, one of Pelican or Dante. Maybe Dante just to like calm more. I don't know.
Sure.
Yeah, that's true. That's a good point. I don't know. Dang, that'd be so funny just seeing like 3 and 2 supports playing. But yeah, I guess that does throw a little bit of a wrinkle in things. But I think like in the end, like people would just have to pick up new skills. Like there's no way around it because they're just gonna. Well, hopefully they're gonna be releasing new heroes. I don't really know actually.
Sure.
So it's just gonna be that same kind of thing.
Mm.
It's just that other people have a head start on that hero already. So that's all.
Okay, so that's one thing we got to talk about with Houston that I think bears pointing out, because I talked to a bunch of people this offseason and they were like, man, after that season, like we were really trying to get Pelican. Couldn't do it, man. Like couldn't do it.
Yeah.
Do you have an idea why Houston, out of all places, got to get Pelican on the roster? Which honestly is probably going to be a huge boost to them this year, right?
Yeah. I mean, even when I was like I did help, I guess, for not very much, but like the first few weeks of off season, I kind of had a good feeling that Pelican was probably coming to Houston. Like even then, I think I don't think he wanted to be necessarily in Atlanta anymore, and I don't know necessarily why, but I think that part of the reason he probably came to Houston is like he thought that the roster was going to be good. Part of the reason might have been Piggy, honestly, because he and Piggy are very close friends. I think it was just like sorry, you asked like
why
I don't know, like
why Houston? Why did he not go elsewhere?
like why Houston? Yeah, I think definitely maybe a big draw is Piggy, and I'm also guessing that probably Junk talked to him a lot and like probably got the buy-in of Pelican. So I think pretty good reasons. I think every team that looked at him probably threw him the bag. So I don't know if money was really a concern at that point. And I think that there's certain teams that you're going to look at and be like, I don't have any faith in this team, even if they throw me the bag. So yeah, I'm thinking there are a few teams that probably are in that situation. If I'm let's say I'm speaking without any knowledge of the situation, I would say teams that if I were Pelican, I would consider are, let's say Shock, let's say Gladiators, Houston, and this is Shock before Proper, right? Yeah, I think you can't go wrong with any of those teams, but Deepay did go out and say that he wasn't able to make the roster moves he wanted to make, right? So let's eliminate them, and then it's between Shock and Outlaws, and yeah, in that scenario, I guess. Yeah, I think at that point you just really need to get the buy-in of the people you'd have to buy into the people on the team to choose between those two, because I think you can't go wrong with either, even though people are going to say that's silly because it's obviously Shock, but like this is not like the same Houston as like before.
Yeah.
It's just entirely different people. So at that point, I think you just have to talk to the people on the team and see which one you vibe better with. And honestly, if Shock was also pursuing Proper at the time, like maybe they wouldn't have gone as hard on Pelican too. So yeah.
Yeah, that makes sense.
I don't think there are other teams basically that would have been options is what I'm kind of trying to hint at.
Yeah. Again, like I think we've talked about this a lot on the show, and I think it's starting to kind of bear a little bit of fruit where like franchises in general, like your past history kind of is guiding your hand a little bit more than your checkbook. Right? Team players want to win. Period. The end. End of story. End of discussion. If you're not winning, there's not too much money you can throw at somebody. to just say, hey, you want to come lose with us for a fat bag? It's like, yeah, maybe in like 2 years when I want to retire. Or if it's the only offer I have, then sure. But, you look at a player like Pelican, you look at a player who else was like a hot free agent, right? Like Mag last year. It's bizarre that, Washington landed him, but whatever. It doesn't, it goes without saying that as we continue with esports, not even just in Overwatch, or just in esports in general, like orgs that like just constantly fuck up, and don't really try to remedy things, or don't really try to like clean the system, are not going to attract good talent, period. And I think it speaks to your, regime last year. It speaks to Junk's regime this year. Like these are good people who you want to be around, who you want to play for, who are good and have good systems. Weird. Pelican shows up here. Don't know. Seems kind of sus. Or does it?
Yeah,
I don't know.
I think the trajectory definitely helps. Like, let's say a year before last year, I don't think Pelican would have joined Houston. I think like cleaning up the reputation is what is probably like the deciding factor.
Yep. I'm sure the salary is comparable to what he was offered, but again, I speak with negative knowledge. I don't talk to anybody, guys. Let's be honest. That said, is Houston throwing the bag, after Beasley? I don't know. Methinks not, but there again, who knows, right? I'm sure it was comparable. I can't imagine it was like the top offer, right?
Yeah,
I think there's a lot of intangibles. Right, exactly.
I think there's a certain team that was always the top offer in
I wonder. I wonder.
Okay, there's one guy I want to talk about, because I think the general feedback I've gotten so far is that we've the saturation of hit scan players in this league is now nutty, right? Like, even if you think through the worst starter, you still think that's a pretty good player. Like, if you go through all the teams, right? Like, what is it, like Shax or something? Towards like the bottom end, which is crazy to think, but tell me someone who's worse, clearly, as a starter, right? And then I think Merit is not the first choice for Houston, but I'm not 100% sure. What do you think about Merit generally? Was that someone who you were looking at before? Like, was that something where you looked at scrims, went like, oh yeah, I'm interested. Okay, he's not 18 yet. I guess next year. Did he ever turn ahead for you?
So I will say the two people I didn't have input on going into the team this year were Merit and Lastro. I actually didn't really discuss them. So what I will say about Merit is that I didn't watch too much of him during 2021. I will say during 2020 though, I heard like insane rumors coming out from Korea, especially going up to grand finals. I heard people telling me that Merit was like destroying teams, that he was better than like a lot of the OWL players. And I think he was actually of age for season 4 of OWL.
Really?
I might be wrong about this.
Okay. If that's the case, then yeah.
Maybe I should check this. I don't want to speak out of my ass. So he's 19 right now.
Wow.
June 20. Okay, I think he would have
mid-season.
No, he was always of age. Yeah. So
okay.
So I think he actually could have signed with a team last year, and I actually am sort of unsure why he didn't. I think Happy is insane, so I don't think we were looking at him. But I think that actually I have no idea why he didn't sign with a team, because after what I had heard, I know that the community tends to be a little bit lower on him. I didn't watch too much of him on O2, so I can't really like speak to that. So I will say that one of those teams that did scrim him when he was popping off was Shock when Junkbook was on it, and then I'll also say that they probably did have somewhat of like a trial process for him. So I'm guessing they trust him. I don't know if he's going to be the best hit scan in the league, but I've heard that he has a very high ceiling. So yeah, I won't give like a very strong opinion on that just because I haven't watched enough of him from 2021.
Nice.
Same.
Now, Joe.
Yeah, that's kind of yes. Hello.
I need a strong opinion, and also being mindful of the time. Where's Houston going to land this year?
Houston, I had the bike helmet in the whisk broken out on me last year, and I said that Houston wasn't, or did I say that? I think it was last year. I didn't say, I said Houston wasn't going to be, huh?
Here comes the overcompensation.
Oh yeah, here comes the overcompensation. Yeah. I didn't believe. I was not, of the faith. I thought they were going to place outside of the top 5. They didn't. They did, but I was proven wrong, so I didn't. You
Yeah.
you get it. Hopefully, if you don't, leave a comment. What will exactly bait the engagement? What will Houston do? I think this team's growing on me in general. I think the more that I look at teams, the more that I am siding with the lean and mean, especially for the first season of Overwatch 2. I think NA, they will do well. I think there are metas that I can see them probably win a stage title. So I'm going to say potential summer winners. I don't remember what tournament that would be, if I'm going to be completely honest. I know that we did some naming convention changes. It's still a summer showdown, so that works. Probably, yeah. I guess with the late start date, it's mid-season. I could see Houston jumping out in front, doing some big things. Maybe some finals appearances. Maybe mid-season finals appearance. Again, given looking at merit, looking at what I know from him from 2019. Granted, I know that he kind of slowed down in 2020. Knowing what Pelican can do, knowing what Piggy can do, obviously knowing what Dante can do. God knows how long he's been playing this godforsaken game.
Too long.
Far too long. I mean, Jesus. And God bless him for it, because we need people. But yeah, I think Houston genuinely has a good team. I don't think the holes are as bad as people expect them to be. And I think any of the blanket problems are going to be blanket problems for everybody and not just Houston. So like Harsha said, the Rhine, the Doomfist, these things that everybody are going to have to, adapt to. Maybe Sojourn, maybe a new hero, maybe Orissa's meta. God knows what she's playing like these days, right? Like that's the stuff that everybody's going to have to solve. It's not a Houston problem initially or solely.
Right. I still need a placement, Joe, real quick.
Oh, that's true. Yeah.
Give me a spot.
A place.
There's a lot of words for someone that doesn't put a number there.
Yeah, right.
A range, right? We're still doing our power rankings, but
yeah, I'll say. Oh, that's tough. I'll say top 5 NA, and I'm fighting the cop out. I'll say top 8 international.
Okay, Harsha.
Right now.
So I'll say the floor is top 5 NA. I think that they'll be. I think that's the worst they could be. I think that Gladiator, Shock, Dallas, and Houston and Reign would be those 5. I don't think anyone's going to break that 5, honestly. I think that their ceiling is they could win tournaments. It just depends on the meta, I think. So I'll give them. I'll say they'll have 1 to 2 deep tournament runs, but I'll say their floor is top 5 NA.
Right. I guess as to add my sauce to this, the thing is how this is developing currently, also based on scrimbugs, really reminds me of last year. And now I'm like, am I scared? Because if we're being honest, right? Like, I don't know how Piggy will be able to cover all the hero pools, and maybe like Houston.
He's fucking good. That's why.
Once again, will be like great in the metas the way he can play. Then you don't have a main support. I'm not sure how that translates into that situation, but apparently we're currently playing a lot of double flex support. So like, how much of the potential is being tested, right? I think still that they are likely to land top 3 NA this time around.
Top 3. Interesting. I'm again, folks at home, YouTube, audio listeners, bookmark that and see what, the power rankings show, because I'm, suspect to change what those top 3 teams look like. If that rocks out, they will change. If the Scrimbucks, this boy cannot make a unique decision. He has no genuine thoughts, no creativity sparks within him. He is German after all, and he needs his hand held at all times.
No, dude, if I'm on the hype train for a team and I see there's a cliff coming and the bridge is not intact, I'm jumping over to the next train. Watch me pivot, dude.
No loyalty.
You're a train hopper, you.
Zero loyalties. I think they're definitely going to be strong. I think that. I agree. I honestly think that they'll be like a sleeper pick, because I think that like people are just valuing things that I think won't be important, honestly.
Mm-hmm. And
No.
we'll shift those. Those lenses will shift once people get a hold of the game. I think people.
Or I'll be wrong. That could also be true.
Hey, possible.
But I don't think so.
Right. I guess that concludes our Houston talk. And with that, let's go to a team. Now I'm thinking, where do we go from here? I think it makes sense to go from one top 3 team NNA from Texas to the other top 3 NA team from Texas.
True.
There are 2 ways you could go with that transition. You could say from a top 3 team to a bottom 3 team, or a top 3 team to the other, Texas.
True. Yes.
So I had
Okay.
I kind of saw two options there.
Right. Now, of course, we're talking about the Dallas Fuel, and they come off a pretty good year. Joe would say borderline woeful.
Okay. Tangent. Put on the brakes. Somebody stop the show. Harsha, your opinion, was the Washington Justice a mid team last year?
A mid team in terms of sorry, what's the metric? Like mid team in terms of, how did I perceive them like in NA?
Yes.
Yeah, I would say so.
Fuck.
Oh, what would you say? Like,
I thought they were dog shit. I thought they were so bad.
Well, I would say that, so obviously we fucking lost to them. So I have a,
okay, let's be honest. You played 9 out of 10 times. You beat them fair and square.
Yeah.
Trash talk doesn't matter. It goes out the window. It happens. Okay.
Yeah, but what I'll say about them is like, if you take their expectations into account, yeah, they were bad.
Yes.
So that's my opinion. But if you look at their performance, I think they were middling. So it's like, but bro, if you look at the names on that team, you do have to have I don't know. If you look at the names on Houston last year versus the names on DC last year, we should not have 3-0'd them, and we should not have basically almost beat them and gone to Hawaii, just from perception alone. So yeah, I would say it was not a good year in terms of that.
And now, arguably the team that overachieved expectations, given the fact that had someone told you XZ is not going to be available to this team and they won't have a hit scan, and their trophy wife DPS is sitting trying to get a visa and will never play, right? They are still going to be arguably the second best team. I think we probably too readily give that to Dallas instead of Atlanta, honestly, or maybe Chengdu. It's still that this was a great team last year. It was a great team that defined its own style because it had to, and in that was very impressive. I think there were a lot of narratives coming into actually, for Paris, the year where they also won a tournament, dude, Rush is only half the story. It's 9K that also, while that might all be true, the qualities now of that coaching stuff, to me, have been demonstrated, right? They took a pretty unwinnable situation, or hard to win situation, and made lemonade, right? So
yeah,
coming into this year, now they have a lot more ability. Presumably, yes, they had some COVID scares here and there. It might delay their start. It's not going to be considerable of a disadvantage, right? They were now able to assemble the squad. As far as I'm aware, every visa is in check and whatnot. And they decided on adding pretty interesting players to the team, keeping pretty interesting players. I think, okay, let's start with the outlier that still to this day doesn't make sense to me why they picked him up. And that is Edison. Is there some hidden quality about Edison that you have inside to Harsha where you say, okay, that makes sense that they brought him on?
No. Well, I mean, there is so he and Fielder are very close because they played in GC Busan together. So, that much, I'm sure he had some input there. And did anyone on their coaching staff? No, I don't think anybody came from GC Busan. So they might be familiar with him from Element Mystic versus GC Busan, but I don't. Otherwise, otherwise from Overwatch League, I don't think Edison impressed me as much as he should have. So I was kind of surprised by that. And the other thing that surprised me was that Sparkle went from like terrible at Tracer to like being a pretty good Tracer player, honestly.
True.
So he like really surprised me last year. I really didn't feel like they needed Edison. I don't think Dallas is. I call them Dostin. I don't think Dallas is scared to like find a like a soul of their team and like a style and just stick to it like they did last year. So it doesn't really concern me as much as like maybe another team signing extra players would. It might literally just be for depth, and in which case, it's fine. Maybe he brings the environment up or whatever. But in terms of like reasons in game, I didn't really think they needed him, and I was kind of surprised that they got him. Honestly, I didn't see it coming at all.
Is there, and again, like, look into it. I got a YouTube video to show you, Earth's flat, water isn't carbonated. I get it, boys. Like, this is tinfoil hat territory, but is this like the Edison Gurriel signing, which I'm sure Yiska's going to jump to? Was that signing, or could it have been like a situation where you're like, okay, we need somebody to kind of like fill a role. We're not sure we can get him, so let's sign Gurriel. Oh shit, we got Edison. Let's sign him too. We have depth. Cool beans. Like, is it like a logistics thing where they just kind of sign two, or they're like, oh fuck, like maybe we need a little bit more dedicated hit scan, so we go Gurriel? Like, I don't think they cover the same hero pools. That's not what I'm trying to say, but it's more of less of like.
I feel like there's so much overlap in this team, so like that's kind of. I don't really know. So like, for example, if they had Sparkle, Doha, and Gurriel, they cover all the same things that the four of them cover, right? So that's why it's a little bit weird. Maybe they did want to just have a lot of depth for Overwatch 2. Like, that's possible. And like I said, like, they're not scared to just bench people and stick with what works.
Sure.
So, that much makes it less of a concern for me. But it is still weird that they like went for it. And yeah, maybe Yiska does have better insight. I don't know.
I actually don't, and I feel like in my mind, if I have resources in order to hire like an additional player, I don't pick Edison. I actually probably pick another support player in this situation because like that backline, I'm not sure. And honestly, like I'll just like tell you straight up.
This sounds heretical already.
No, I don't know about Chio as a player, and if he potentially can cover the full range that he has to cover. Because, like, if we're playing double flex support metas, or if we are playing main support metas, like, or is Fielder just going to pick up Lucio? Like, maybe that's just feasible now, but, like, I mean, if you're designing a team to be meta-resistant, you're probably not going 4 DPS, you're probably going 3 supports, right? So, like, what do you think about this backline, Joe?
You ready? We're going to do what everybody's always done, that everybody always seems to forget that was always done in the past. There's a double flex support. We take our little rookie boy. We take Gurriel. Say, here's Zenyatta. Take him. We go, here's Baptiste.
Right.
They got the guns. They play like all those heroes. They play like Xe. Who else? Bazzi. What's some other legendary, flex support / hit scan DPS players. I think there's reason to believe that Overwatch 2 and Overwatch in general is going to become more role fluid. I think Gurriel, again, like, it's tinfoil hat. Yes, it's a thought, right? Hypothetically speaking, if there was a double flex support meta and Chio just like forgets how to play the support role and doesn't know how to, throw his amp matrix the right way, whatever the hell that ability is called, the stupid frisbee move. I think Gurriel can probably fill in.
I full on blame Shock for like shitting into people's heads, entrenching that idea with like Raska playing Bab to Super playing Genji to Violet playing like McCree, like, and how often has that worked well? Okay, I give you Bab, I give you Rascal Bab, like. I don't know, man. I don't feel so good right around here. Like, unless Edison is like the hyper uber flex player, then it makes sense to me. But my dude barely was able to do that for Atlanta, like on his own role.
I don't expect it to happen either, to be honest. Because one thing I did hear from Rappel, I think, is that that Xe did fill the Zen role because was this when I think this is when Repel joined Titans. So I think he left on like short notice,
Mm.
and that's why they ended up.
Okay.
If my timelines are correct, I think that's why they ended up using XC for Zen. So I don't think it was actually just because I think it was like actually just like an emergency thing rather than we think he'll fit in super well. And they do have plenty of time right now, so I think
Of course.
it is probably just going to be Chio and Fielder. One thing I think I remember them saying is that they thought that Chio was like pretty flexible in terms of what he can play, and that's why they signed him.
Okay.
I'm not sure if I'm making that up or if that was from an interview like a long time ago, like right when he was signed,
Right.
because I feel like I did read that somewhere. But yeah, I don't know. In general, I have checked myself on Dallas because I doubt them. I there have been times where I've doubted them too much, and then they just like seem to always
Overperform.
prove me wrong last year.
Mhm.
So I think that I think especially with Rush and especially with like the players on this team, like they do have some insane players. I think that they will find ways to make things work. One thing that we skirted around, but that I feel like is important to note is that in my opinion, their two best players are Fearless and Hanbin.
Right.
And they can only play one at a time. So that's sort of like an indirect nerf that Overwatch hit them with,
True.
and I don't know how that's going to affect them though.
Very true. I think in general, um, I think for most people that would probably be a hot take, but when you like actually think about it, I don't think too many people will be like upset by that.
I
To
think
add-
Fearless was like a legit MVP candidate last year, honestly. And if he had like a good stage 4, I think he'd
Yeah.
have it over Leave. And then, dude, Hanbin is like insanely skilled, right? So yeah, Sparkle's good too. But
Yes.
they have 3 good players and 2 of them can't play at the same time.
Yep.
Straight up, I'm not surprised if Hanbin just hard benches Fearless this season. Depending on what,
Yeah.
like if it isn't monkey meta, it's totally possible to me that Hanbin is just better at every other hero they could throw him.
It is certainly possible.
I agree
Because-
because I think one thing you've noticed with every single Fearless team is that they play super hard around his Winston and like push all their dude. I don't know why okay, I hate narratives a lot. So I don't know why in season 3 fucking Fleta got MVP in season 3 compared to season 4 when the soul of that Shanghai team was Fearless. Like every time they tried benching him, they lost. Like every single time without fail. They literally had to reverse sweep Soul in that first
Melee?
in the melee off the back of Fearless's Winston.
Yep.
They like benched him for overall playoffs and then got dumpstered. Well, not dumpstered. They just didn't do that well, right? And then I like yeah, Fleta's good, but then like Fleta improved the next year, and then people don't look at him as an MVP candidate, in my opinion, which is like, I don't know. I felt like that was such a weird scenario. But then Dallas did the same thing that Shanghai did, and they won so much off of that, right? So I feel like if you use Fearless, you have to play entirely around him, versus if you use Hanbin, you just have a player that can play probably anything at a really high level. So one concern I have is if you bench Fearless, is this team a lot worse suddenly?
Yeah.
Because if you have a team and you just push all your resources into Fearless and you let him like be the soul of that team, you'll always have a top 3 team in Overwatch 1, right? We saw that 2 years in a row. Like fucking discount. I saw people saying like Fearless had the biggest turnaround ever in terms of skill. Like no, he just discount season 1 Shanghai. It doesn't count. Fucking terrible situation. So we've seen a proven track record with Fearless. I don't know if I have the same trust in this team not having that style and like benching him. That's my concern with Dallas.
Right.
It's a big paradigm shift for sure. Agreed.
You know, like Fearless might be coming in as one of the losers also in playtime this season, of course. Yeah. But honestly, I'm kind of scared for Doha. Am I the only one? Like in my mind, if I'm thinking, okay, we have a flex or a projectile DPS meta. Sparkle's playing every single one ahead of Doha, right?
Yeah.
Like Sparkle's also playing like if Tracer is meta, then maybe if you need Tracer like some flex DPS, okay, I can then see how Doha plays. For everything else, like Gurio or Edison are more likely like play in basically every other meta. So it feels pretty niche. In what situations? Basically, like, okay, if we're playing Tracer, I'm not even 100% sure if Sparkle then takes it, given
It
the
might be Edison.
right.
Sure.
Like, is there potential where we're just not seeing Doha at all this season?
I mean, I think there's potential to. I think it kind of, for me, at the very least, I think it starts with how teams view Overwatch 2. I think as much as I believe it to be very open and very like, fresh playground, everybody can go in, do what they want and build your own style, straight up build a bear and, we're going to have a really cool, like colorful meta. And I think that probably will be the case just because of the, two regions, but I think in that kind of freedom, a lot of teams, I'm going to say this and this is going to be taken out of context, get kind of scared and just like try to focus in on one thing and things become really rigid in practice circles, especially, I think NNA particularly. And if that's the case and there isn't like this really flexible and kind of fluid, like mid map, like, oh, they made this call, we need to have that flexibility to answer it or XYZ. Or maybe Overwatch 2 is so much of a change that can't be the case, especially initially. Yeah, I think that significantly impacts Doha's playtime. It could just be, I mean, if I'm going to be honest, I think Sparkle's probably just like a must play. I think if anybody's going to be a soul of this team, it's probably going to have to be Sparkle, especially when you look at like Fearless's kind of shallow-ish hero pool. I don't think I'm interested. It would be an interesting bet to make to see if Dallas never plays him or if the meta just kind of like flips in a way that like he just doesn't see play. Because I think there are some metas that like they aren't going to be able to like field well, and Rush is going to go, look, we're not necessarily doing good at this, but you know what we are really good at? X, Y, or Z, and we can just like tunnel that, and we can put Fearless in. We can play, full court press, aggressive Overwatch like we always do, and try to take it to him. I think it'll be a little bit more poignant when he's played. Like I think it's going to be like very stylistic, like what's coming. It's going to be kind of telegraphed, but yeah, for Doha. Kind of depends on how things starts. If it's a flexible meta, I think he sees a lot of playtime. If it's not, it's looking pretty grim.
I guess that could be another reason that they signed Edison. Dude, I don't think that Doha was as skilled as maybe people view him as. Maybe I think he just fit in well with those Element Mystic like players. He has experience with them. They might just be trying to expand and not be reliant on certain players. Like, okay, like being completely honest, like the players that they cut, Jexay, Repel, Pine, like all. I mean, Pine we didn't see anything, but like the other two, like were clearly on like a downward trajectory, in my opinion, and like it makes sense that they were accounting for that. Maybe that's what signing Gurrio. Well, Gurrio they had to fill in a hole, right? But maybe that's what signing Edison is. It's like having insurance that you can have Edison sparkle in for a lot of these metas. The only, I guess, actually, I was going to make a point about Sombra, but we don't even know what Sombra does now because they changed her. So yeah, I don't know if Doha's going to play that much. Honestly, I think that there is a reasonable chance that he's like benched a lot of the time, and the players like do change. And I did forget, like when I was talking about Edison, kind of like how I sort of fit him into the team, but now it kind of makes more sense. Like looking at it, maybe they just wanted to replace some or fill some holes and like be future proof, I guess, in case Doha doesn't pan out.
Or okay, be mindful of the time. I think like is okay. Let's try. If someone wants to be my guest, but is there a world where this team is not top 3 NA?
Yeah,
I think so.
Really?
Yeah.
Okay.
Just because, so I'll say they have the same ceiling, right? I'll say that they could still win tournaments. Like they are the same people from last year for the most part, right? And Rush has like demonstrated that he can make I don't know, like he can make the most out of like what he has. So I'll say they have the same ceiling, but there are like a lot of talented teams, like Houston, Dallas, Gladiators, Shock, and I had named Atlanta. Like all of these teams have potential to be top 3 in my opinion, right?
Yeah.
I think if I have teams that I think are likely not to do it, it's going to be the team that both of their best players can't play at the same time, right? So that's why I have some concerns about Dallas. I'm not going to like say that 100% they won't be top 5 because I think they have a really high ceiling, but I think that they can definitely have metas that are shaky for them, or where they don't have a soul potentially. And like Volmo said, like I think Sparkle's going to have to be that soul if Fearless is not playing all the time, right? So I don't know. I think that there are some question marks around them, but they do have a really high ceiling, anyways.
I agree on a lot of those points. I didn't really take into consideration that there's only one tank, and Fearless and Hanbin both are incredible players. You look at Hanbin statistically, he's nuts. And I think a lot of people, and partially me included, maybe have overweighed how important being flexible or being like these really deep teams. I think there's pros and cons to that, and I think maybe we'll see more of that be influenced or inflated because of the 5v5 change up. I call me Rosie, call me, a man of the past, but I look at what Russia's been able to find in terms of just like strategical depth or things like that, and maybe that's just, and maybe that was just a master stroke of oh shit, we don't have Xe, let's find something, and maybe it was complete luck. I don't think it's luck entirely, because
he's done it 2 years in a row. I think
exactly. Yeah. Right, like it doesn't lightning doesn't strike twice, all the fucking woohoo flowery bullshit, right? Facts are he's nuts. This team's really, really talented. I think they'll find a way. If they can't necessarily play up to the meta, I think it would be criminal to see them outside of like top 3 NA at the very least, and competing for stage titles, mid-season titles, even championships. Again, like I think Sparkle's good enough. I think I side with you in terms of like, is the Hanbin Fearless switch going to be big? Is that style going to change? And if so, can everybody kind of keep up or slow down? Right? It's they have to be on the same page, and we haven't seen that ever. So it's going to be a little weird.
I'll add one more thing. So I think that they were able to cover up not having Xe last year because that team had such a strong identity, right? Where they could like rely on Fearless and Sparkle to be like sort of like those sources of I don't know, like aggression, like passion for that team, right?
Mm-hmm.
I think that potentially, let's say it's smarter not to play Fearless a lot of the time. I think that maybe these players don't work as well as they do together. So, and it's gonna sound silly saying that because like, we do have like that data point of Paris before, but that was a very different team. So, yeah, I think, and that was a very different team. And they had they had Xe and stuff like that. So it's just very different factors, I think. But yeah, I can see why you would not have them lower than top 3. I think that there's definitely the chance that they'll prove me wrong and be like still, best team in NA. I just do have like that tiny doubt in my head. So that's why I have like a wider range.
For sure.
Yeah. I think in my mind, there is range. I think Dallas is also known to get a little bit slower into the season, theoretically, in terms of like how it goes in the preseason. We'll see, but generally speaking, I think this might also just be their year. I think already last year, there's an argument to be made that if Winston stays meta, they might even have a better season than they did.
Yes.
So we'll see how this develops. Winning Overwatch League, unfortunately, always is an element of luck involved, like in terms of what remains meta. So we'll see about that. And we've had our fun. And now it's the Toronto Defiant. Which, if you're a Toronto Defiant fan, I mean, you might be entertained in a MIDI way. Let's say that. I'd like to think you're entertained by the worst franchise in Overwatch League history. Now, let me substantiate that because that's not true by win rate alone.
But yeah, they're a mid-team. Yiska, come on.
They are a team that has not participated in playoffs.
True.
And, I mean, unfortunately, Houston hasn't either.
Yeah.
And they're a team that really also very rarely had, like, stages where, like, something's going on there.
Peaks.
Right?
Yeah.
They are basically, like, every season, it seems like the Toronto Defiant are doing the equivalent of buying the Balenciaga tube sock shoes that were, like, nice, like, 3 years ago, but now are kind of mid, you know? But you're overpaying for them like a motherfucker, right?
Yeah.
Now, I feel like that has been true for, like, you know, the rejects of Philly last year, right? Where they brought on Hisu and like Sado, and you're like, that's a team that actually was really good for at least a regular season, right? So how bad can Toronto be? Turns out,
dude,
very mid.
No. I have to. Okay. I know you're just like describing like how people would perceive them, dude. There's some teams that you see that you're never scared of ever, like Oh, in hindsight, I've never lost a match to Toronto, actually, now that I think about it.
Ooh.
Oh, yeah, I didn't even know that, actually. So, okay. But like, there's some teams that you go into the server and you just know that there's nothing overwhelming about them. Dude, even though Toronto upgraded players last year, like, they did not feel like a special team in like, in any sense. Like, I didn't get the feeling that, like, where did they stand out? You know, they had the Philly rejects. So those already, that's like the rejects from another mid-table team last year, right? They had Neist, who was like not that impressive and actually has a pretty bad reputation in Korea. They had Lastro, good player, who they got like last minute. Dude, I don't know where you're like supposed to find any. Not a single person on the team has ever impressed me, except for Aspire when he played well in like that 1 month, right? So no, I didn't really like know what to think about them. Now they pull up with like this new roster that we have like displayed. Dude, like, I don't know how they fit together and like why they put this team together. Like, I don't know what the vision is here, honestly. And like, they have talented players. Like, I think Hop had an up year last year. I think he played pretty well. Twilight is like always going to be a good player until he's like done with his game, I think. But like, I don't know like why these players are on a team together, if that makes sense. And to like add on to this, because I won't like spread too much behind the scenes stuff, but like, Toronto is not a team that's afraid to spend money. Like, they will spend money if they want to. So like, this is what you put together after having that reputation of being able to spend. Like, I'm sorry, like, there should be, if you know the free agents that this team was chasing, you'll see like why I find like what they put together in the end like pretty funny.
Yeah,
I think if in order to give a little bit more meat to the bone for and not to go give specifics, because that's always a little dirty, I think, but like, they brought on Twilight. This is like your beacon now, right? Like, this is basically like the guy you bring in. I think they thought Hisu was that guy as well. In my mind, that's like saying I'm building around BQB, my franchise. Yeah. And then,
you're not wrong.
Like, it all went pretty well. And then it all like went off the rails. They didn't get a couple of guys they wanted to, even though they were pretty sure that they weren't good. And then, okay, they finished off strong, and they were like, oh shit, okay, Chirong, here's the bag, bro, right? And they therefore saved the backline. I think that's legitimately one of the best backlines we have in the Overwatch League now, based on just sheer talent. But like, yes, I'm feeling like, dude, Muse is what Sado was last year to me.
Yeah.
Where there's like, people definitely have communicated that there were holes in the hero pool. Like, how much can he really like back up. There actually were some limitations to what the team could play because of Muse. Like that's forced a play style. Okay, now we're sort of in a different tank situation with Hotbar and whatnot. Not also like only one tank. Maybe it isn't as pronounced. Then I'm looking at like their DPS. Bro, although in Finale are not the type and caliber of players you want to have when your backline is Chirong and Twilight. I'm sorry.
Yeah. That's exactly it. That's my issue with them. Like when Twilight was their first signing, I was like, oh, like these guys really are like going after it. And then they didn't get like, I don't know, like a main support player is not the you don't want your main support player to be the second best player on the team, right?
Yeah.
Like that doesn't make sense. I don't know. Like I have such like low expectations for them this year. And like, yeah, Hoppa had an up year last year, but I don't I don't know. There's such good tanks in the league. Like Muse, honestly, I felt like was very limited in terms of what he could do. I didn't really think as highly of him as like a lot of the people in the community. And I know like DP later came out and spoke about like how they couldn't play Ryan comps, for example, because they didn't think he was it wasn't because of Moth. It was like they didn't think he was very good at Ryan. Like like they have rookie DPS with like Hisu as your veteran. Like Hisu came in season 3, that's your veteran on the like, DPS. Then they have like tanks that aren't demonstrably solid across the board, and then they have like 2 good supports. So like in the end, you're just looking at a support line that's stable and nothing else. Is how I feel about them.
Yeah, and it's so disappointing because I think everybody, say what you want about Toronto, like them or not, whatever, don't care. Nobody wants dog shit teams in the league, period. Right? Yeah. No, it does nothing for nobody. It doesn't do any good for the league. Doesn't do any good for, staying up for 12 hours straight trying to watch all these godforsaken games. I don't want to watch more bye weeks. Neither do you. Let's be honest. This is a team with a S caliber support line in a game that's already been announced to be maybe not necessarily too, nice to supports, with a flex tank turned main tank player who threw some good bombs in season 1. Muse, who played Winston. Hisu can snipe, and 2 rookies. Sick. Awesome. In a game that's more DPS centric than we've ever seen. I'd rather watch Gundam Evolution tournaments than see Toronto Defiant. I don't know, guys. This doesn't jump off the page. Either Twilight moves a DPS and plays 2 roles at once, and, mecha pilots, that stupid gif where the anime characters' fucking hands split out to like 17 different, phalanges, and they're playing like 12 different things at the same time. Toronto, bro. I don't get them.
The thing is, I think that's doing, although a little dirty, I think he's certainly like better than the conception that you have based on him being like a London member from season 3.
Yes, 100%. Like this isn't London, although, but
he's doing the hand thing. The Italian's coming out.
I'm doing the Italian thing. Let's start putting him up to like some other NA DPS lines. Do you want all though, or something that Atlanta can offer you, or something that Shot can offer you, or something that maybe even Glads can offer you?
Yeah, that's the thing. There's so many good players in the league now that like being good is not enough. Like I'm okay. We'll talk about like the top 5 teams that I had pegged. Right? We have Pelican, Dante Merritt. We have Kilo, Proper, and then potentially Sam. I don't know how he'll fit in necessarily. We have freaking like Sparkle, Edison, Doha, Gurria. Okay, that one I have some questions about, but Sparkle's gonna be good, right? No matter what.
Sure.
Okay? We have, even if we're not, we have like Kai Nero Speedily. And Venom.
That's nuts.
It's super good. Like even if we look at other teams like Justice, we have Happy, Assassin Decay. All okay. We have Happy Decay. We have all good players there, right? So, dude, even fucking Boston is striker. Like I don't know. And New York has Yaki Flora. Like I have such a hard time saying that good players are like good because suddenly they're average, you know what I mean? Or like below average because there's so many good players in the league.
Here, I'll even go a step further, Harsha. Let's take a gander. Let's go to France for a moment. Let's take a trip to the Louvre. I kind of like Glister and Naga.
Yeah.
I kind of like them a little bit more than Alvo.
Yeah. especially if rumors about Glister having a step up are true. Like
Mm-hmm.
Glister now got pretty good.
It's pretty nuts. Toronto, I don't know.
Bro, just go down the list. Like, it's Shockwave Aspire.
Yeah, those are good players. Like,
those are good.
Like, that's argue. No, I will commit. That's better as a DPS line than what Toronto has. I think they're
Yes.
overrating the shit out of Hisu. Like, it is no
sure.
longer like contenders, like season bumfuck where this kid carried a final, right? That's
Yes.
not the same Hisu. This is the big leagues, bro. And this guy, like, I don't know if they think like it wasn't as meta and whatnot. That's my entire issue with Toronto. It's like, yes, like if you had more signings of the energy of Chirong and Twilight, I wouldn't hate you. Like you're trying at this point, but you're buying like the expired Kobe beef from like some market, right? Like why do you think you're going to have like league winning success? And you might not think that, but like with last year's like second best dudes or like top 5 dudes. What is the reason when everyone is upgrading? At best, right? Like if you think about it, you're signing top 5 talent from other teams. Everyone is upgrading. The best you can do is top 5.
Yeah. So
right?
that's the other thing, dude. Like let's think about for example my team from last year. Like I think we could reasonably call Houston gatekeepers of season 4, right?
That's fair.
Where we beat every team under us and for the most part lost to most of the teams over us except for, once to Dallas and like twice to Shock. I think that you can reasonably call that like the gatekeeper team. Toronto wasn't close to that, right? And Houston is upgraded across the board almost, right? So like that to me that feels like they don't. I don't know whose vision this is, like, but it doesn't feel.
Oh,
strong.
it is bizarre.
Yeah.
I hope I'm wrong because I don't want Twilight's legacy to be like this.
100%.
Yeah.
I mean, end of the day, I hope that boy's palms were greased. I hope he's got the bag. I hope he pulls up in a Lamborghini. Maybe him and Tavik can drive a bus together. I don't know. This team sucks.
Yeah. I want him to do well. He's my friend. Like, I talk very frequently, but I still have so many doubts with this team.
And
with this organization, honestly.
True.
Now, when you say it sucks, my problem is like,
how in what world have I become the cynical, jaded fuck, and you're the nice guy?
Here's my problem. It is mediocre at best. That's what it is, right? Like,
bro, if every team's mid, then nobody's mid.
Yeah, but
this team's gonna go close with Paris. They probably lose to the Mayhem.
Yeah.
This team needs to make some moves now before you end the season nearly winless.
I'm very surprised if they finish top half in an A. Let's say that.
Yes.
Yeah, that's the thing. Their ceiling is like the bottom, top. Yeah, like the middle, basically.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That's the issue.
Somebody has to shit the bed like nobody's ever seen before. Like somebody's hands have to be lopped off. Keyboards have to be like inexplicably lost in some sort of crazy move to a LAN center. Like this, I'm sorry. I hate shitting on teams. But with everything that these two fine young gentlemen have said, which is true, you look at the DPS in a game that's supposed to be more DPS centric. You look at the supports in a game that's, at least currently, not necessarily DPS or not necessarily support centric. And these tanks are mid at the heroes that they play in a very shallow capacity. I don't get it. Yeah, Chorong's sick. Twilight's very good, but these two players can't be the souls of the team.
Yeah.
Okay,
your main support should never, in any scenario, be your second best player.
Oh.
Let me suggest some mild augmentations, and you guys then tell me how you think about this. Okay.
Sure.
So they're not going all though. Instead, they're getting Yaki. Okay. And then instead of Finale or Hisu or whatever, right? They are getting
proper Pelican.
No, it doesn't have to be that high. I think
Yeah, sure.
even someone like Venom, someone like
a Tracer player.
yeah, maybe even Striker.
No, I think Yaki enough for me is like enough to go, okay, now you've got some more leg room. Now you've got at least somebody who's gonna like follow up on like a Twilight play. This kid just makes plays, bro. Who's gonna follow up his plays? Who's gonna TP into the back line and int with him? You know, like come on, Yaki will give me. I don't know, like tanks are tough because like we don't even know what tank looks like, but somebody like a little bit with some meat on their bones that like can kind of play the field. Not hot, but God, please, anything but like who's like a good flex tank that we could just like maybe throw on Ryan.
Sign Yaki Kyoku, just make a
fine. I'm cool with that. Fuck it, run with that. I'd be much more, you know, charitable to that and say, oh well, Kyoku's never got a chance and he's been so good for so long. Maybe he can play Ryan. You know, I've seen Hoppa throw bombs since 2018, and even before that, I wasn't all that impressed, folks. Muse can play Winston. His ball's all right, I guess. Like, if we're talking about Dallas like shifting gears and how that could be a problem, God, what the fuck does Toronto look like? Yeah. And then you've got, I mean, okay, Yiska, maybe you can correct me if I'm wrong. Who's unable to like? Whose visa is like out in limbo until the summer? Cool. Now we're 1 DPS down and we have no flexibility. Awesome. If there was ever a season
I saw
for KDG to pull out of like a strat out of his ass, it'd be now. Yes, what were you saying?
I think I saw a highlight clip of Finale's. Maybe was it Finale's Echo? Maybe.
Okay.
It wasn't a highlight clip. It was a low light clip, basically.
Beautiful.
So yeah, I don't know. I don't really have faith in this team.
And it's so sad. Again, I don't want to be. I hated shitting on Boston for the longest time. I hated shitting on the Mayhem. Obviously, nobody wants to remember the fucking 0-42 Shanghai Dragons. And I don't think Toronto's going to be that bad, but it's just going to be like, cool, let's go to the fucking bread bowl again. Let's bake out the memes because we're not going to be celebrating the gameplay when these guys play. Let's be honest.
The thing is, like, I think what is realistic is that they're probably going to win the Canadian duel. I think that's...
Do you... What?
Yeah, I think so.
You think so?
Yeah, I think so. I think, like... Did we talk about Titans yet? No, we didn't, right?
No.
I have pretty big question marks about False as a single tank, dude. Like that was a boneheaded idea.
All right.
But
I have literally no idea how that team will okay. That team has somehow upgraded in every role, and I don't know if they'll do better.
Yeah. And then but like back to Toronto, I think there's probably no way that at least, like, there's some quality on the team. They're probably not going to be last. I think that's very, very unlikely to be the case.
I think they'll be top of the bottom or bottom of the middle.
Yes. Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. I think they are likely to be floating above the Titans, the Spitfires.
So
probably competing with like Uprising, right?
That's the thing about this team, though. They have spent major bag. They've upgraded. Well, they have like brought in. Yeah, I'd say they've upgraded in a lot of these roles. Yet, like, look at where they're placing, and look at where they placed last year. They were bottom of the middle last year. They're probably going to be bottom of the middle this year. I don't necessarily know if that's like Overwatch, just like players getting better, like teams getting better. I think it's more like they don't know. Either they just have no ability to land the people they want, which could be true, in fact might be true, or they just don't have any direction and don't know like what they should be doing, and I think that's also true. So I'll just say both. Yeah, I think it's both, and I think that like I don't know, something has to change, and like I think KDG is a good coach, and I think that like, dude, something around this org, I don't know.
It is bizarre. You look at the vision. I don't know if somebody's not plugged into to Korea. I don't know if this is overstepping.
It's so
I don't know.
weird too, right? Like every other franchise they have or esports team they have is really successful in these other esports. Like Mad
Sure.
Lions is very good, right? Across the board.
Not
Mhm.
anymore.
Yeah, okay. Fair. Which other teams do they? I think the
Their
CDL
Ultra, I
team
think, was good.
was good, right? Like, and for some reason, there's some issue with the Defiant that they can't get it over the line, right? It's
Yeah.
unfortunate.
I won't lie. Like, even, and this isn't like, let's be honest, the world still isn't completely open yet. So, like, even if, like, we're going to go, like, contract route and say, oh, well, teams have more power than ever, maybe they can make some, like, agile midseason moves. You still have to fight for visas. You have to bring the players over. Are the Toronto Defiant going to do another Discord situation and sign Aspire again? Like, fuck me, bro. Like, you can't even do that. Like, as much as like people are going to shit on me for this take, I feel like more teams probably could have gone like the North American route, been agile, and genuinely probably still placed about the same.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I genuinely think that as good as South Korean talent is, logistically, like structurally, it's not easy to do. It's just hard to get it right. I don't know.
Can I? And we have to be mindful of the time here and of Harsha's time as well. But like, let me finish on a good note because I think we have. If you're a Toronto fan, the last half an hour was painful to you.
Support a better team. I don't know.
Let me also say this is a team that puts a lot of resources and takes this very seriously in terms of like the application of the resources, and this is something that should be commended for because they very obviously want to be successful, and that is something that it can't be generally said about every franchise. Some are phoning it in, and like that is not the Toronto Defiant, and I love that about them, right?
It makes it more painful though, because they clearly have ambition, like they want to be good. Like you don't sign Twilight without having ambition, right?
100%.
Oh, so just put something better out, please.
Yeah,
that's all.
And
I agree. They take care of their players. They don't want to screw them over or anything like that. It's just like you should be able to do better if these are the resources you're able to provide the team with.
Yeah, I think that's also important to sort of like put that frame on it because we're not shitting on the team just out of pure hatred.
No,
we're just very frustrated with 3, possibly 4 seasons of mediocrity when you want to be more, right?
Yeah.
And like it's unfortunate. We were just as critical of an organization like Dallas, and it feels like you still haven't like gotten rid of those ghosts or these thought patterns on how to fix this roster. And for instance, like Harsha had to learn that he had to let go of some whatever nostalgic emotions because before his organization could be successful. I would argue Houston is very much the same case, right? Like the ghosts have to be banished from the meta in order for you to finally start winning. And I feel like you had a bunch of like new starts, but still the same patterns apply every season. You're bringing in these pretty established talents that were arguably never the best or haven't for a long time. You're paying a lot in order to get that quality because we understand that like players are skeptical towards your ability to assemble a roster, so they want to be paid based on that skepticism to at least, go into retirement with a hefty paycheck. But there has to be fresh ideas and a fresh take, and I'd much rather almost love to see you like run with an underdog scenario for a season and take a bunch of like just like start from scratch, then like have this situation like come up again and again. And yes, you've tried a bunch, you've had the Western push and whatnot, and you bring so many fans to the league as well. Like it's really like this franchise, this location, the willingness of the ownership group to spend on success has so much potential, and it's just frustrating to not see it actualized.
What you're describing is a culture shift. Like they need something big to change in their organization, and it's just not happening. It's just more of the same every year right now. So that's the issue, I think.
Yeah, I think it probably starts with the head coach. You probably like you can't take the head coach like of the second best team that couldn't win a trophy. I think if I was Toronto Defiant, I would have much rather tried No Hill than KDG another season, for instance. Some stuff like that. Just throw something at the wall. Like someone that clearly overachieved was maybe a little wacky, but at least something different, you know? Right. Okay, then let's sort of like do some housekeeping because, as I said, it was not run as smoothly as I would have liked to have it, because we kind of forgot the patrons show. So, right now, what we also forgot was to say that this is, of course, episode 223, and it was brought to us by Battlecrab, Refined Bean, Bronzebud, Buhao, Chare, Commissioner Picasso, Chris Out 344, Kasha 67, Lolshin, Porkchop Sammy, Rex Zane, Volman Smooth Nuts, and Your Misery. Right? Now, as we hopefully get Papa Avro back in order to, make it a little bit more smooth, give it a little bit more earlier appreciation to our viewers, I still want to thank Harsha for coming on, thinking about Overwatch once again. And I mean, the best of luck in whatever like professional endeavor you have going forward, and hopefully some content to come. Are you planning anything in terms of the off-season content now?
I think maybe when the season starts and okay, if they give me access to the game, I'll definitely talk about my initial impressions. Dude, they might not give me access to the game. I don't know if they like it that much. We'll see. Otherwise, I might do a podcast if the game is enthralling, just like a weekly recap or something like that. But yeah, otherwise, I don't know if I'm going to be making YouTube content. I don't think I'm going to have that kind of time, but I will definitely watch as a hobby. So that's why I want to kind of talk about it as well. You're going to have to play this episode backwards to hear my thoughts, though, because Yiska's going to be switching it around for the.
No, we're not. We're just keeping it. Joe, anything you want to call woeful this week? Or are you good?
Your brain, your ability to host.
Fair.
I don't know. It's a pleasure. Obviously, Harsha, thank you for coming on, and excited to get into the season.
You guys are the only podcast I'll wake up at 6 a.m. to.
Oh, well, we appreciate you. We appreciate that.
I mean, it's also the only podcast that has Europeans that you can have to coordinate times to. And if Platchek knocked, you could have stayed in bed until 3 p.m., right? Anyway.
They're nice. I don't know what they're doing, so.
All right. Thanks a ton. This was episode 223 of the Tactical Crouch podcast.